It has been a very hot summer. Um, so I did not launch my boat this year for a couple of different reasons. Number one, of course, I had some other priorities. And number two is I really wanted to make a lot of progress on the list of projects that I really need to complete before we leave for our cruise. So I do have this lengthy list here that's been attached to the wall of the boat shed, and I've made my way through most of it. Um, some of the major projects I've already recorded on video, such as the garboard plug and the heater and reinforcing of the rudder and the lightning protection. But a lot of the smaller projects I did not record, but I do want to document those for posterity. And I do have quite a few other projects to do, some large and small, and I'm going to go over at least a couple of those now. Also, I want to do a long-term update of some of the projects that I completed, starting with this lovely boat shed that I built last year. There was a concern that there would be some condensation in here, but once the ground dried out, I had no condensation whatsoever, just by leaving those two vents open on either side. So this has been very successful. Also, I'll mention that I have been exposed to, or the boat shed has been exposed to, hurricane force winds as well as over 12 inches of snow, and I have had no problem at all. Another update is this garboard plug area. I was not really happy with the final outcome of the project that I did get on video. So I ended up starting over and grinding it down. Because the hole that the garboard plug was in was far too large, I needed to make it smaller, so I ground down the fiberglass around that hole to a taper. I then made some patches of fiberglass, a series of them with the largest one to the hull. I then did some fairing and sanding, cut a new hole to the right size, and then attached a backing block to the inside with embedded nuts in it. Then I did some barrier coating, and finally attached the garboard plug flange with 5200, and I through bolted it. And I've replaced those dock lines with this red nylon webbing. It's a flat webbing, and I just made a loop here to attach this tow ring and the float. There's some other loops down at the other end, clipped into some carabiners. But this is actually the first generation, because I found the webbing to be a little light and very thin. And this is the second generation, which may look identical, but is not. It is extremely heavy duty. These nylon webbing straps are very thick, and I don't anticipate any problems. And another update here is to my lightning protection system. So this is the grounding plate that I installed. As you can see, it's starting to corrode a little bit. But what concerned me here was all of the bolts, the through bolts that I put through the hull. I did do a lot of waterproofing with some 4200, but in the end what I decided to do is just epoxy those in. That'll make it very difficult to remove them if that's ever necessary. However, I'm willing to take that risk if the alternative is that they leak. As a follow-up to these water tanks that I installed under the quarter berths, either side, each one is 10 gallons. I installed these deck plates inside on the top to get inside. That allowed me to get in there and clean them out after stuff starts growing in there. Also on this side, because the vent for these tanks is actually coming out of this and it goes into the hanging locker. This one is actually not really vented, or at least I tried to vent it, but it was not successful. So I used another one of these hydronic vents. It's for hydronic heating in a house. I used this when I had the PSS shaft steel. It's made of brass, I believe. And that has worked very well. There's a little float in there, just lets air in and out as needed. Also, here in the bilge, I have more room for yet another water tank. Just need to find the right size. I'm unsure whether I'm going to plumb it to these other two, or if it's just going to be a standalone that I can just withdraw some reserve water from. That remains to be seen. Another project here where the wiring comes in through the deck from the mast and goes to the switch panel over there. This wiring kind of just hangs down. There's some sharp screws and stuff that are here. Plus it looks very unfinished, so I had decided to finish that off. I had a piece of scrap fiberglass. This is from probably when there was an ice box in there. So I painted it up and epoxied in a little piece of wood right here, screwed in another piece here, and it just kind of fits in there. Fits like that and looks good. Another project here are the forward stanchions. This is the stanchion base. I secured some blocks in here. These are going to be for my preventer for my boom to keep from getting clobbered by that. In order to reinforce that, I put some stainless metal plate. It's pretty beefy. Did it on both sides, and I think that will take care of that. Okay, so one of the jobs that I've meant to address or to get done here is to remove this paddle wheel speed sensor. On this particular boat, I found that it rarely works, maybe due to the wire or to the screen. I've already replaced the paddle wheel itself, but in the end, it really doesn't matter. I mean, that's telling you speed through water rather than speed over ground, which is probably only valuable if you're a racer, which I'm not. And you know, the speed over ground is pretty much given to me by Navionics, or you know, on a phone or chart plotter or whatever. And even then, I'm not even sure how much, you know, how necessary it is. So I'm planning to remove this. Already chipped away the I guess that was barrier coat on there, and we heat it up with a heat gun and then remove it. Also here in the bilge where it comes into the boat, you can see it protrudes quite a bit, making it a potentially dangerous situation. I've already started to remove it. So I'm not sure why I added a backing block here. Maybe I think I may have thought about putting some other drain in there at one point. So I'm gonna remove all of this. Already heated up the through hull part. Should come out relatively easy. And then I'm going to close up the hull. No problem. Backing block begun. And now measuring for the hole closure. So this is about 6 inches from the edge of the hole to about here. So that'll provide a nice wide taper to close this hole, which is, I guess, about 1.5 inches or so. And there we have it. Of course, I had a box fan blowing. Try to shoot it all out the door somewhat since I'm in the boat shed. So yeah, I used the flapper wheel here. Started here and just kept going down, and then once I'd go all the way around, I'd start here, and that way it would kind of taper down here. So this is kind of like a sharp edge. And then after that, I just went over it with a sander. So I think it's pretty much ready for glass. Okay, and now ready for glass. I've got all my epoxy ready here. I have cut out the patch. So I got 7 layers. This is biaxial. See, it's very thick. So I usually do the largest side to the hull. There's less of a chance of getting air in there. But this will all be applied as one single patch. And there's the patch applied. I ended up cutting out 2 more pieces for a total of 9 because I didn't think that was enough, and I was correct. So I got the peel ply on there. I think I still need to work out some more air with the fin roller, but it looks good otherwise. A few hours later, here it is up close. So before I put the patch on, I did put a coat of unthickened epoxy on the hull, put the patch on, and after I ripped off the peel ply, I realized there was a little bit of a divot here in the middle, so I added a little bit more round pieces of fiberglass to fill that in. So next, I've given it a quick sanding to knock down some high spots, a coat of unthickened epoxy, and now the usual process. First coat of fairing, which is epoxy with 407 filler, and that is the second coat, a little less thick than the first. Now sanded the fairing compound down, some more sanding, and a coat of unthickened epoxy. Now the first coat of barrier coat, which is West Systems epoxy with 422, and that is the second coat, which will lighten up once it cures. So that is pretty much it. All I need to do is go over it with some bottom paint when I do the whole thing. And one other thing here on the inside, where the hole was. So you can see where the backing block was removed. I've kind of sanded it down. Really, the best way to do these sorts of things is to do a taper on the outside and the inside of the hull. But because I have the keel here, that's a little difficult. But it should be fine doing it this way. So I sanded this down. Now I think I'm just going to finish it off with one single piece of glass, which is probably more for aesthetics than anything else. I don't think this would ever leak. And now bilge coated, and it's done.